My daughter refused to come when I collapsed at work, and when I found out why, it destroyed me. My name is Lorraine Holloway. I'm 58 years old, and I've survived poverty, abandonment, and every kind of sacrifice a single mother can make. But nothing prepared me for waking up in that nurse's office, dizzy and disoriented, only to hear that my only child, the daughter I gave up everything for, couldn't be bothered to drive 20 minutes to see if I was okay. She said she's busy, the nurse told me, her voice careful, like she was delivering news of a death. Busy. That word sat in my chest like a stone. I raised Tanya alone, worked 3 jobs, stretched dollars until they screamed, gave her every opportunity I never had. And when I needed her most, she was too busy. But that humiliation, that was just the surface. Because later that night, I got a phone call that changed everything. A young coworker, voice shaking, told me he'd seen Tanya earlier that day. She wasn't at work. She wasn't in an emergency. She was at a cafe downtown, holding hands with a man I knew all too well. My landlord. The same man who'd been giving me rent extensions for months. The same man who lingered at my door with compliments I never asked for. The man who held my home in his hands. And my daughter was with him. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a missed phone call. This was about secrets I never saw coming, lies that ran deeper than I imagined, and a truth that would either destroy us or save us. What I discovered next broke my heart wide open.
Let me take you back to where this all started. Because to understand why that phone call felt like a knife twisting in my chest, you need to know what I gave up to get here. I was 24 when I had Tanya. 24 and hopeful. Believing her father Dion when he said we'd build something together. He had a smile that could convince you the sun would rise twice if he said so. Smooth talker, big promises. Always had a plan for next month, next year, the future we'd share. But when Tanya turned 6, Dion walked out the door with nothing but a duffel bag and a half-hearted apology, said he needed to find himself, as if the rest of us weren't still looking too. After that, it was just me and my baby girl. I worked as an administrative supervisor at a community clinic downtown. It wasn't the kind of job that made you rich, but it was steady. I helped people check in for appointments, managed records, coordinated with doctors and nurses. Some days I felt like I was holding the whole place together with duct tape and prayers, but I was proud of it. Proud that I was helping people who needed it most. Still, one job wasn't enough. On weekends, I cleaned offices. Late nights, I did data entry for a legal firm. Some months, I picked up shifts at a retail store just to make sure Tanya had new shoes for school. I didn't sleep much, didn't have time to, but I made sure my daughter never felt the weight of what we were carrying. She grew up watching me hustle, watching me stretch a $10 bill into 3 meals, watching me smile through exhaustion and show up even when my body begged me to quit. I thought she understood. I thought it was teaching her resilience. I thought she saw strength. And for a while, she did. Tanya was sharp, got good grades, stayed out of trouble. When she graduated high school, I cried so hard I thought my chest would crack open. She was the first person in our family to walk across that stage, the first to hold a diploma that meant something. I thought we'd made it. But then she turned 24, the same age I was when I had her, and something shifted. She moved into her own apartment across town, said she needed space, needed to figure out who she was outside of being my daughter. I understood that. I wanted her to have independence, the kind I never got. So I supported her, helped her move, bought her a couch from a thrift store and helped her scrub it clean. At first, we talked every few days. She'd call to tell me about her new job at a marketing firm, about the friends she was making, the life she was building. I was so proud I could have burst. But slowly, the calls got shorter. Weeks turned into months, months turned into silence, broken only when she needed something. A little money for rent because her paycheck was late, help covering her car insurance, a loan she promised she would pay back but never did. I gave it to her, every single time. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give until there's nothing left. We sacrifice until the bone shows. We love even when it's not returned in equal measure. But somewhere in all that giving, I lost sight of something important. I lost sight of her. Tanya stopped visiting unless she had to, stopped calling unless she wanted something. When I asked if she was okay, she'd brush me off with a quick, "I'm fine, Mom," and change the subject. She became a stranger, wearing my daughter's face. And I convinced myself it was normal, that this was just what happened when children grew up. They moved on. They built their own lives. They didn't need you the way they used to. I told myself that lie so many times I started to believe it. But deep down, in the quiet moments when I lay awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, I felt it. The distance, the coldness, the way she looked at me like I was a burden she'd outgrown instead of the woman who gave her everything. I felt it, and I ignored it, because acknowledging it would mean admitting that maybe I'd failed, that maybe all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, all the years of breaking my back to give her a better life, maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't enough. And that thought terrified me more than anything else. So I kept giving, kept answering her calls, kept wiring money I didn't have, kept pretending that everything was fine between us. Until the day I fainted at work. Until the day I woke up and learned that my own daughter, my only child, the person I would have died for, refused to come see me. That's when the illusion shattered. That's when I realized that the distance between us wasn't just about her growing up. It was about something much deeper. Something I couldn't see because I was too busy trying to hold everything together. And what I found out later, what I learned about why she didn't come that day, it broke me in ways I didn't know I could break.
It was a Monday. Mondays at the clinic were always chaos. People angry about wait times, phones ringing off the hook, doctors running behind schedule. I'd learned to navigate it like a dance I'd memorized years ago. Smile, redirect, reassure, repeat. But that particular Monday felt different from the moment I woke up. My head was pounding before my feet even hit the floor. Not the dull ache of a headache I could push through. This was sharper, heavier, like someone had wrapped a belt around my skull and pulled it tight. I stood up too fast and had to grab the edge of my nightstand to keep from stumbling. I splashed cold water on my face, drank some coffee, told myself I was just tired. I had been tired for weeks, maybe months, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix, the kind that sits in your bones and whispers that you're running on fumes. But I didn't have time to be tired. Bills didn't care if I was exhausted. My job didn't care if I felt off. So I pushed through it the way I always did. I got dressed, drove to work, parked in my usual spot, walked through the clinic doors at 7:53, 3 minutes before my shift started. The morning passed in a blur of paperwork and patient check-ins. Mrs. Davis came in for her blood pressure medication. Mr. Thompson needed his referral updated. A young mother brought in her crying toddler with a fever.
I processed them all with the efficiency of someone who'd done this job for 15 years. But around 11:30, something changed. I was standing at the front desk, sorting through a stack of insurance forms, when the room started to tilt. Just slightly at first, like the floor had turned liquid beneath me. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision, but everything felt too bright, too loud. The phones ringing sounded like they were inside my head. I pressed my palm against the counter to steady myself. "Lorraine, you okay?" Nurse Brenda asked from across the lobby. She was a thick-hipped woman with a voice like honey and the kind of no-nonsense attitude that made everyone listen when she spoke. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Just need some water." But I wasn't fine. The pounding in my head intensified. My chest felt tight, like someone had reached inside and squeezed. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air wouldn't come. Heat flooded my body, sudden, intense, unbearable. Sweat prickled on my forehead. I heard someone call my name, but it sounded far away, muffled, like I was underwater. And then the floor rushed up to meet me. I don't remember falling. I don't remember hitting the ground. What I remember is the darkness swallowing me whole, quick and complete, like someone flipped a switch. When I came to, I was lying on a narrow bed in the nurse's office. The ceiling tiles above me were yellowed and water-stained. I stared at them, confused, trying to piece together how I'd gotten here. "Lorraine, baby, can you hear me?" Brenda's face appeared above me, her expression tight with concern. She pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, checking my pulse. "What happened?" My voice came out hoarse. "You fainted, honey. Scared the hell out of all of us." I tried to sit up, but she gently pushed me back down. "Not yet. Your blood pressure was through the roof when we checked it. You need to rest." Blood pressure. Right. I'd been ignoring the symptoms for weeks. The dizziness, the headaches, the way my heart raced for no reason. I kept telling myself I'd get it checked eventually. Eventually never came. "I'm fine," I said again, even though I clearly wasn't. Brenda gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "You need to go home, and you need to see a doctor today." "I can't just leave. We're short-staffed." "Lorraine." Her tone left no room for argument. "You passed out cold in the middle of the lobby. If I hadn't caught you, you'd have cracked your head open on that desk. You're going home." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of humiliation settle over me. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. I was the one who held everything together. I didn't fall apart in front of people. "Did you call someone to pick me up?" I asked quietly. Brenda hesitated. That hesitation, that brief pause before she spoke, told me everything I needed to know. "I called your daughter," she said carefully. My heart lifted for a half second. Tanya, my baby girl. She'd come. She'd drop everything and come make sure I was okay. That's what daughters did, right? That's what family did. "And?" I prompted. Brenda's jaw tightened. She said she was busy. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and cruel. "Busy," I repeated, as if saying it out loud would make it make sense. "She said she couldn't come." Something inside me cracked. Not a loud break, more like a hairline fracture that would spread, slowly, silently, until everything collapsed. I forced a smile. Maybe she's at work. She probably can't get away. Brenda shook her head. "Baby, it didn't sound like that. It sounded personal." Personal? What did that even mean? What could possibly be more important than checking on your mother after she collapsed? I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling 58 years of motherhood crumble into something small and pathetic. My daughter, the person I'd given my entire life to, the person I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, couldn't spare 20 minutes to see if I was alive. "I can drive you home," Brenda offered softly. "No," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll be fine." But I wasn't fine. And I wouldn't be fine for a long time. Because that moment, that rejection, was only the beginning. What I learned later that night would tear open wounds I didn't even know existed.
I left the clinic early, walking to my car on legs that still felt unsteady. The afternoon sun was too bright, too harsh. Everything felt wrong. My body, my heart, the silence where my daughter's concern should have been. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the traffic lights or the other cars around me. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and stood in the entryway, just breathing. The place felt colder than usual, emptier, like the walls knew what had happened and were offering their condolences through silence. I tried calling Tanya. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. This time she declined the call. The line went dead after a single ring. That sharp rejection felt worse than the first. I sat on my couch, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the screen like it might offer me some explanation, some reason why my daughter would ignore me on the worst day I had had in years. Around 7 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text. "Tanya, can't talk. I'll call tomorrow." Tomorrow? Like I was an obligation she could pencil in between errands. Like my health was something she'd get around to when it was convenient. I set the phone down and pressed my hands to my face, willing myself not to cry. I'd cried enough over the years. Cried when Design left. Cried when money ran out and I didn't know how I'd feed us. Cried when Tanya moved away and I realized how quiet the apartment would be without her. But this felt different. This felt like grief. I was mourning the relationship I thought we had, the daughter I thought I'd raised, the love I thought was unconditional. At 8 o'clock, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Caleb, one of the younger guys who worked at the clinic. Sweet kid, always respectful, the type who held doors open and offered to carry heavy boxes without being asked. I answered. "Hello?" His voice was tight, nervous. I wasn't sure if I should call, but "I think you deserve to know." My stomach dropped. "Know what?" He exhaled slowly, like he was gathering courage. "It's about your daughter, about why she didn't come today." I sat up straighter. "Go on." "I saw her earlier, around 1 o'clock. I was grabbing lunch at Cafe Bloom downtown, and she was there." "Okay." "She was with a man." My throat constricted. "What man?" Another pause, heavier this time. "Ms. Lorraine, I think you deserve to know. It's about your daughter. About why she didn't come today." "Go on." "I saw her earlier, around 1 o'clock. I was grabbing lunch at Cafe Bloom downtown, and she was there." "Okay." "She was with a man." My throat constricted. "What man?" Another pause, heavier this time. "Ms. Lorraine, it was Mr. Leonard." For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I'd just heard. "Mr. Leonard," I repeated slowly, testing the words to see if they'd make sense. They didn't. "Yes, ma'am. Your landlord." I knew who he meant. Of course I knew. Mr. Leonard owned the building I lived in, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and a smile that always felt a little too wide. He'd been giving me extensions on my rent for the past 6 months, extensions I was grateful for but never quite understood. He'd started lingering at my door when he came to collect rent, complimenting my smile, asking if I needed something, offering to keep me company since I lived alone. I always politely declined, always kept things professional, always felt a little uncomfortable with how long his eyes stayed on me. And now my daughter was having lunch with him. "Caleb, are you sure it was her?" "Yes, ma'am." I walked right past their table. I even said hello to her. "What did she say?" She looked surprised, like she didn't expect to see anyone she knew. She just said hi real quick and turned back to him. My hands started shaking. "And you're sure it was Mr. Leonard?" "Positive. I've seen him around the clinic before when he dropped off paperwork for you." I felt sick. "Caleb, how did they look together?" He was quiet for a beat too long. "How close?" I pressed. "Ms. Lorraine, he was holding her hand." The room started spinning again, but this time it wasn't my blood pressure. This time it was rage and confusion and betrayal all crashing into me at once. "He was what?" holding her hand across the table, and they were talking real close, like they knew each other well. I couldn't form words. My mind was racing, trying to piece together a puzzle I didn't even know existed. Why would Tanya be with my landlord? Why would she be holding her hand? And why did it feel like my entire life was built on lies I'd been too blind to see? I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, replaying every interaction I'd had with Mr. Leonard. Every time he smiled too long. Every time Tanya avoided my questions about how she was doing. Every extension on rent that felt too generous to be real. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. My daughter and my landlord were connected. And whatever they were doing, it involved me. I just didn't know how deep it went yet. By morning, I was done being the victim. I got dressed with shaking hands, throwing on the first clothes I could find. My body still felt weak from yesterday's collapse, but rage had a way of fueling you when nothing else would. I skipped breakfast, didn't bother with coffee, just grabbed my keys and drummed straight to Mr. Leonard's property management office. It was a small building on the east side of town, sandwiched between a laundromat and a check cashing place. The kind of spot you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I'd only been there twice before, once when I first signed my lease, and again when I needed to drop off a maintenance request. I pushed through the door hard enough to make the bell jingle violently. Mr. Leonard looked up from his desk, surprise flashing across his face, before settling into that too smooth smile of his. "Miss Holloway, I wasn't expecting—" "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Now." He stood slowly, adjusting his glasses. "Of course. Please, have a seat." "I'll stand." His smile faltered. Good. I wanted him uncomfortable. I wanted him to feel a fraction of what I'd felt last night. "I know you were with my daughter yesterday," I said flatly. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. That bothered me more than if he'd tried to deny it. "Yes," he said simply, "I was." "Why?" He gestured to the chair again. "Please, Miss Holloway, this is going to be easier if you sit down." "I don't want easy. I want the truth." He sighed, leaning back against his desk. "Your daughter came to me 6 months ago." My heart stuttered. 6 months. The same time the rent extension started. "She said you were struggling," he continued. "Said you were working yourself to the bone trying to keep up with everything. She was worried about you." "And what does that have to do with you holding her hand in a cafe?" "I'm getting to that." His tone was gentle, almost paternal, and it made my skin crawl. "She offered to work for me, part-time, filing paperwork, answering phones, helping with tenant communications. In exchange, I'd give you extensions on the rent, cover the difference when you came up short." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "She what?" "She's been working here 3 days a week for the past 6 months. That's how I've been able to help you. It wasn't charity, Miss Holloway. Your daughter earned every dollar." My knees went weak. I grabbed the back of the chair he'd offered, lowering myself into it, because standing suddenly felt impossible. Why wouldn't she tell me? Mr. Leonard's expression softened. "She said you'd be too proud to accept it, that you'd refuse if you knew she was sacrificing her own time to help you. She made me promise not to say anything." I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to keep the sob from escaping. All this time, I thought those extensions were Mr. Leonard being generous, or worse, that he had ulterior motives. But it was Tanya, my daughter, quietly carrying my burden without asking for recognition. "She loves you very much," he added. "She talks about you all the time, about how strong you are, how much you sacrificed for her." The tears came then, hot and fast. I'd spent the entire night convinced my daughter had betrayed me, convinced she was using me somehow. And the whole time, she'd been protecting me. Then why? I had to pause to catch my breath. Why didn't she come when I fainted? Why didn't she answer my calls? Mr. Leonard's face tightened. "She did hear about it. One of her friends who works at the clinic texted her around 1 o'clock. She came straight to my office, barely holding it together. But she didn't come to me. No, he admitted. She didn't. Why? He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I think you need to ask her that yourself. But what I can tell you is that when she showed up here yesterday, she was crying so hard she could barely speak. She kept saying it was her fault, that she should have been there, that she'd failed you. Failed me? The words came out choked. How could she think that? Because she's been trying to carry your weight and hers at the same time. And she's exhausted, Miss Holloway. Just like you. I stared at him, trying to process everything. My daughter had been working in secret to keep me afloat. She'd heard I collapsed and blamed herself. She was crying so hard she couldn't function. That's what you saw at the cafe, he said quietly. I took her to lunch to calm her down, to remind her that she couldn't pour from an empty cup. When I held her hand, it was because she was breaking down. I was trying to comfort her. Nothing more. Shame washed over me. Hot, burning shame. I thought the worst. Jumped to the ugliest conclusion. Let my mind twist something innocent into something ugly because I was hurt and scared and desperate for someone to blame. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't apologize to me. Talk to your daughter. I nodded, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. Is she here now? No. She took the day off, said she needed time to think. I stood on unsteady legs. Thank you for telling me, and for helping her help me? He smiled, genuine this time. She's a good kid, Miss Holloway. You raised her right. I left his office feeling like I had been turned inside out. Every assumption I'd made over the past 24 hours had been wrong. My daughter wasn't abandoning me. She wasn't betraying me. She was drowning trying to save me. And I'd been too wrapped up in my own pain to see it. I sat in my car for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to talk to Tanya, needed to hear her side of this, needed to understand why she thought carrying my burdens in silence was better than letting me know she was struggling too. But before I could start the engine, my phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. Tanya, Mom, can we talk? I'll come over tonight if that's okay. I stared at the message, my vision blurring with fresh tears. Me. Yes, please come. I didn't know what she was going to tell me. Didn't know if I was ready to hear it, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we were going to face it together. Because that's what family does. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you've spent so long apart that you've forgotten how to reach out for each other, we find our way back.
Tanya arrived at 6:30 that evening. I'd spent the entire day cleaning my apartment, not because it was dirty, but because I needed something to do with my hands, something to keep my mind from racing in circles. When I opened the door, the sight of her nearly broke me. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that goes beyond one bad night. Her eyes were swollen and red-rimmed, her shoulders slumped like she was carrying something too heavy to hold. She'd pulled her hair back into a messy bun, and she wasn't wearing makeup. My daughter, who never left the house without at least mascara on, looked like she had given up trying to hold herself together. "Hi, Mama," she said softly. I pulled her into my arms before she could say anything else. She stiffened for half a second, then melted into me, her body shaking with silent sobs. We stood there in the doorway for what felt like forever, just holding each other. All the hurt from the past day, the rejection, the confusion, the anger, it all dissolved into this moment, this desperate, aching need to be close again. "Come in," I whispered finally, inviting her inside. She sat on the couch, curling her legs beneath her like she used to do when she was little. I sat beside her, close enough that our knees touched. I talked to Mr. Leonard this morning. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. I figured you would. Why didn't you tell me? About the job, about covering my rent? Because you would have said no. You would have refused and worked yourself even harder trying to make up the difference. I couldn't watch you do that anymore, Mama. I couldn't. Tanya. She interrupted, finally looking at me. Her eyes were fierce, pleading. My whole life, I watched you break your back for me, watched you go without so I could have, watched you smile through pain because you didn't want me to worry, and I hated it. I hated that you gave so much and never let anyone give back to you. I opened my mouth, but she kept going. When I moved out, I thought I'd finally be able to help you, thought I'd have my own money and could take some of the burden off your shoulders. But life got expensive fast, and you still kept giving me money even though I knew you didn't have it. So when I found out you were behind on rent, I went to Mr. Leonard and made him an offer. It was the least I could do. Baby, you don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. The words came out sharp, raw. You gave me everything. I owe you everything. No. I took her hands in mine, squeezing tight. You don't owe me for being your mother. That's not how love works. She pulled her hands away, pressing them to her face. Then why do I feel like such a failure? My heart cracked. What are you talking about? Yesterday, when the nurse called, I panicked. I heard that you had fainted, that your blood pressure was dangerous, and all I could think was that it was my fault, that I'd stressed you out, that you were working so hard because of me. And I couldn't face you. I couldn't walk into that clinic and see you lying there knowing I was part of the reason why. Tanya, that's not... I'm pregnant, Mama. The words came out so quietly I almost didn't catch them. But once they registered, they hit me like a freight train. You're... what? She looked at me then, tears streaming down her face. I'm pregnant. 3 months along. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My mind was trying to catch up with what she had just said. And the father? I managed to ask. Left. Her voice broke on the word. 2 months ago. Said he wasn't ready to be a dad. Said I should take care of it. When I told him I was keeping the baby, he blocked my number and moved to Atlanta. Oh, baby. I've been trying to figure it out on my own, she continued, words tumbling out now like a dam had burst. That's why I took the job with Mr. Leonard, why I've been dodging your calls, why I didn't come see you yesterday, because I didn't want to see me like this. Didn't want to know that your daughter, the one you sacrificed everything for, is a mess, that I'm broke and scared and pregnant by a man who doesn't want me. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I didn't want to be another burden on you. You already give me so much, already worry about me so much. And now I'm bringing a baby into the world that I don't even know how to take care of. How am I supposed to tell you that? How am I supposed to admit that I need you when you're already struggling? I pulled her back into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. You're not a burden, I whispered fiercely. You are my daughter. And this baby, I placed my hand on her still flat stomach. This baby is my grandchild. Do you understand me? You are not a burden. You are my heart. She cried harder, clutching me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had tilted sideways. We stood like that for a long time, long enough for her sobs to quiet into hiccups, long enough for the sun to set outside my window, long enough for me to realize that we'd both been drowning in silence, each of us convinced we had to be strong for the other. I'm sorry I didn't come, she whispered eventually.
I'm sorry I didn't see you were struggling. I should have told you sooner. I should have asked more questions. She pulled back, wiping her face. What are we going to do, Mama? I tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. We're going to figure it out. Together. I don't have money for a baby. I can barely pay my own rent. Then we'll figure that out too. But how? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I knew one thing for certain. My daughter needed me. My grandchild needed us. And somehow, some way, we were going to make it work. You're not alone in this, I said firmly. I don't care how hard it gets or what we have to sacrifice. You are not doing this alone. She nodded, fresh tears spilling over. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. So much. We sat there holding hands, both of us emotionally wrung out, but somehow lighter. Like finally speaking the truth had lifted a weight neither of us knew we'd been carrying. My daughter was pregnant, alone, scared, broke. And I was still recovering from a health scare with bills I couldn't pay. On paper, we were a disaster waiting to happen. But in that moment, sitting on my worn couch with our hands intertwined, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Because we weren't alone anymore. We weren't pretending to be strong while falling apart in private. We were being honest, being vulnerable, being real with each other for the first time in years. And that honesty, that was the first step towards healing. I didn't know it yet, but that conversation was about to change everything.
2 days later, there was a knock on my door. I'd been expecting it. Mr. Leonard had scheduled a routine apartment inspection for the first of the month. I'd forgotten all about it with everything else happening, but he'd sent me a reminder text that morning. I opened the door to find him standing there with his clipboard and that professional smile he wore during business hours. Miss Holloway, mind if I come in? Of course. I stepped aside, letting him enter. He did his usual walkthrough, checking smoke detectors, looking under sinks, making notes on his clipboard. I followed behind him, my mind only half present. I kept thinking about Tanya, about the baby, about how we were going to make any of this work. When he finished, he turned to me. Everything looks good, but I actually wanted to talk to you about something else. I tensed. What is it? He gestured toward the couch. Can we sit? We sat, and he set his clipboard aside. His expression was serious, but not unkind. It's been difficult, he began, for both you and your daughter. I've seen you both struggle individually, and it's been hard to watch. I didn't know where this was going, but my stomach tightened anyway. I have a proposal, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. Okay, move in with her. I blinked. What? Your daughter lives in one of my properties across town. 2-bedroom apartment. She's been late on rent the past 3 months, and I know it's because she's trying to help you while also preparing for a baby. You're behind here, she's behind there. You're both barely keeping your heads above water. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What if you moved in together? Split the rent, split the bills, help each other instead of both of you drowning alone. I stared at him, my mind racing. You want us to be roommates? I want you to be a family again, he said simply. The way you used to be, before distance and pride got in the way. The words hit harder than I expected. He continued, she's about to have a baby. She's going to need help. Late-night feedings, doctor appointments, childcare. And you need to stop working yourself into an early grave. You need someone to share the load with. You need each other. I thought about Tanya's face 2 nights ago. The exhaustion, the fear, the loneliness of trying to handle everything alone. What if we can't make it work? I asked quietly.
what if we just end up fighting? Then you fight, but at least you're fighting together instead of suffering in silence apart. He stood, picking up his clipboard. I'm not going to pressure you, but think about it. Really think about it. Because right now you're both on separate islands and you're both drowning. Maybe it's time to swim back to each other. After he left, I sat on my couch, staring at the wall. The idea terrified me. Tanya and I had barely been able to maintain a relationship when we lived separately. What would happen if we were under the same roof again? Will we drive each other crazy? Would we fall back into old patterns of me giving too much and her pulling away? But then I thought about her crying in my arms 2 nights ago. Thought about her working in secret just to help me. Thought about that tiny life growing inside her that would need both of us. Maybe Mr. Leonard was right. Maybe we'd been so focused on being independent that we'd forgotten how to be interdependent, how to lean on each other, how to be the family we used to be. I picked up my phone and called Tanya. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Mama. Mr. Leonard came by today. Yeah? How'd the inspection go? Fine. But he suggested something. Something I want to talk to you about. What is it? I took a deep breath. He thinks we should move in together, combine our resources, help each other out. Silence on the other end. Tanya? Are you serious? Her voice was small, uncertain. Yes? I know it sounds crazy, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's exactly what we both need. Mama, I don't want to be a burden. Stop, I interrupted firmly. Stop saying that. You're not a burden. You're my daughter, and you're about to make me a grandmother. We need each other. And I'm tired of pretending we don't. I heard her breath catch. I'm tired too, she whispered. I'm so tired of trying to do everything alone. Then let's stop. Let's stop being alone. Let's be a family again. Another long pause. Okay, she said finally. Okay, let's do it. Relief flooded through me. Really? Really? I mean, it's going to be weird. We haven't lived together in years. I know. We'll probably drive each other crazy. She laughed, soft and watery. Probably, but maybe that's better than what we've been doing. Maybe it is. We talked logistics for another 20 minutes, whose apartment we'd use, how we'd split costs, when we'd make the move. By the time we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just hope, peace. Because we weren't running from each other anymore. We weren't hiding our struggles or pretending to be stronger than we were. We were choosing to be vulnerable, to be present, to rebuild what we'd lost. And sometimes that's what love requires. Not perfection, not independence, just the courage to show up and say, I need you, and that's okay.
Moving day was chaos. We'd decided to use Tanya's apartment since it was bigger and already had 2 bedrooms. I packed up my life into boxes that barely fit in the back of her friend's pickup truck. Clothes, dishes, books, photographs, 34 years of living reduced to a dozen cardboard containers. When we pulled up to her building, she was waiting outside, hands on her hips, looking both nervous and excited. You ready for this? She asked as I climbed out of the truck. No, I said honestly, but let's do it anyway. The first week was rough. We argued about everything. How to organize the kitchen, whose turn it was to do dishes, whether the thermostat should be set at 70 or 72. Stupid things that felt enormous because we were learning how to share space again. One night, we had a fight about her leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor. It escalated into a full-blown argument about respect and boundaries and old resentments we'd both been holding on to. We yelled until we were both crying, and then we sat on the floor of that tiny bathroom and talked, really talked, about everything we'd been holding back for years. After that, things got easier. We fell into a rhythm. I'd make breakfast while she got ready for work. She'd do the grocery shopping while I handled the laundry. We'd cook dinner together most nights, talking about our days, laughing at stupid jokes, slowly rebuilding the ease we'd lost. When her morning sickness kicked in hard around month 4, I was there, holding her hair back, bringing her crackers and ginger ale, rubbing her back while she cried from exhaustion. "I don't know how you did this alone," she said one night, pale and miserable on the bathroom floor. "I didn't have a choice, but you do. You have me." She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "I'm glad I do." We went to her prenatal appointments together. I held her hand during the ultrasound when we found out she was having a girl. We cried together when we heard the heartbeat for the first time, strong and steady and real. "She's going to be beautiful," I whispered, staring at that grainy black and white image. "Just like her grandma," Tanya said, leaning her head on my shoulder. The months passed faster than I expected. We painted the nursery pale yellow, bought a crib at a secondhand store, and spent an entire Saturday putting it together while arguing over the instructions. Washed tiny onesies and folded them into neat stacks in the dresser. My health improved too. With Tanya cooking half the meals and splitting the bills, I wasn't as stressed. My blood pressure stabilized. I had energy again. I could breathe without feeling like I was one crisis away from collapsing. We were healing each other without even realizing it. One evening, about a month before her due date, we were sitting on the couch folding baby clothes. Tanya had one hand on her belly, rubbing slow circles where the baby was kicking. "Mama?" she asked softly. "Yeah, baby." "Thank you for not giving up on me, for not being angry when I kept secrets, for being here." I set down the onesie I was folding and looked at her. "I'll always be here, even when we're mad at each other, even when things are hard. I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, blinking back tears. "I know. And I'm sorry it took me so long to realize I needed you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't need me." We sat in comfortable silence after that, just folding tiny clothes and feeling that baby move. Two women who'd almost lost each other, now building something stronger than what we'd had before. When Nyla was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in October, I was there in the delivery room, held Tanya's hand through every contraction, reminded her to breathe when she forgot, cried when that baby girl finally came into the world, screaming and perfect and ours. The nurse placed her in Tanya's arms, and my daughter looked down at her child with so much love it physically hurt to witness. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "I'm your mama, and this," she looked up at me, eyes shining, "this is your Nana. She's the strongest woman I know." I kissed Tanya's forehead, then gently touched Nyla's tiny hand. She wrapped her fingers around mine, holding on tight. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart," I whispered. Later that night, after Tanya had fallen asleep and the hospital room was quiet, I held Nyla in my arms and rocked her slowly. She was so small, so fragile, so completely dependent on the two of us to keep her safe. And I realized something profound. This baby had saved us. Not intentionally, not consciously, but her existence had forced Tanya and me to stop pretending we didn't need each other, had forced us to be honest, to be vulnerable, to rebuild what we'd almost destroyed through pride and fear. She'd brought us back to each other, and for that, I would be eternally grateful. The first month with Nyla was beautiful chaos. Tanya and I took shifts with night feedings. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. to the sound of crying, stumble into the nursery, and find my daughter already there, rocking back and forth with exhaustion written all over her face. "Go back to bed," I'd whisper. "I've got her." "You sure? I raised you, didn't I? I think I can handle one tiny baby." She'd smile, grateful, and hand Nyla over before shuffling back to her room. I'd sit in that old rocking chair we'd found at a yard sale, feeding Nyla while the house slept around us. Those quiet hours became sacred to me. Just me and my granddaughter, the world reduced to the rhythm of her breathing and the weight of her in my arms. During the day, we figured things out together. Tanya taught me about new parenting methods I'd never heard of. I taught her the old tricks that had worked with her, how to soothe colic, how to tell the difference between hungry cries and tired cries, how to trust your instincts even when you felt clueless. We were a team, a real one. Not perfect, but present. One evening, about 6 weeks after Nyla was born, Tanya came into the living room where I was folding laundry. She had that look on her face, the one that meant she had something important to say. "Mama, I need to tell you something." I set down the towel I was folding. "What is it?" She sat beside me, picking at her nails the way she used to do as a kid when she was nervous. "That day you fainted, when I didn't come see you, baby, we've already talked about that. I know, but I need you to understand something." She looked at me, eyes serious. "I was terrified, not just of seeing you hurt, but of admitting that I couldn't fix everything on my own. I'd spent so long trying to prove I didn't need help that when you actually needed me, I froze. I chose pride over showing up for you, and I'm so sorry." I reached for her hand. We both chose pride over each other. We both thought we had to be strong alone instead of strong together. But we're not doing that anymore, right? Her voice was small, vulnerable. "No, baby, we're not." "Good, because I can't do this without you, and I don't want to." "Neither do I." We sat there holding hands while Nyla slept in her bassinet across the room, her tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Later that night, after Tanya had gone to bed, I stood in the doorway of the nursery watching Nyla sleep. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across her face. She looked so much like Tanya did as a baby. Same round cheeks, same button nose, same way of curling her little fists up near her face. And I thought about everything we'd been through to get here. The fainting, the rejection, the secrets, the revelations, the hard conversations and harder decisions. All of it had led to this moment, to 3 generations under one roof, to a family rebuilt from broken pieces, to love that survived pride and fear and distance. I walked over to her crib and gently touched her soft hair. "Your mama and I almost lost each other, but we found our way back, and we're going to make sure you never feel like you have to carry your burdens alone. We're going to teach you that asking for help isn't weakness, that family means showing up even when it's hard, that love isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest." Nyla stirred slightly, her tiny mouth making sucking motions in her sleep. I smiled, my heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. "Welcome home, baby girl. Welcome home."
If you told me a year ago that fainting at work would be the best thing that ever happened to me, I would have called you crazy. But it's true. That collapse forced everything hidden into the light. It shattered the walls my daughter and I had built between us. It revealed secrets we'd been too afraid to share. And it gave us permission to stop pretending we were fine when we were falling apart. Here's what I learned. Pride will make you suffer in silence. It'll convince you that needing help makes you weak, that asking for support means you failed, that carrying everything alone is somehow noble. But it's not. It's just lonely. Misunderstandings will destroy the relationships you care about most if you let them. When you assume the worst instead of asking questions, when you hide your struggles because you don't want to burden people, when you mistake independence for strength, you lose the very people who would have helped you carry the weight. My daughter and I almost lost each other because we were both too proud to admit we needed help. Too scared to be vulnerable, too convinced that love meant never being a burden. But real love, real family, it's not about being perfect or self-sufficient. It's about showing up honestly, about saying, "I'm struggling," and "I need you," without shame. About rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Sometimes life has to knock you flat before you realize you were never meant to stand alone. And sometimes the people you think have abandoned you are actually drowning right beside you, just waiting for permission to reach out and hold on. Don't wait for a crisis to be honest with the people you love. Don't let pride steal years you could have spent healing together. Because at the end of the day, we all need each other. And that's not weakness. That's being human.